I'm getting married to him. So, I'm cutting ties with you.
Mom, who had left me in a foster home ever since Dad passed away, showed up after a long time. But she said to me, folding her arms with a man I didn't know. I was too shocked to say anything, but Mom didn't care. She kept talking happily. The man next to her was the son of the CEO of a big company and was set to take over as the next CEO. They wanted to get married, but apparently, his parents would be furious if Mom had a child. I didn't understand why having a child would make them mad, but Mom made it clear, you're in the way.
Anyway, so don't think of me as your mom anymore.
After saying just that, Mom left with the man. I was abandoned by my own mother. The moment I realized it, tears started pouring from my eyes, and I cried until I couldn't make a sound anymore. After that, my uncle and his wife took me in, and eventually, I started calling them Kyle and Sophia. One day, while the three of us were living happily, someone started ringing the doorbell over and over. Sophia stood up, looking puzzled. Who could that be? The moment she looked at the monitor, her face stiffened, and she called Kyle.
Ani, you should come here.
When Kyle saw the monitor, his smile disappeared, and he hurried to the front door. Sophia told me, it's okay, trying to reassure me, but I couldn't shake off the unease. Then, I heard Kyle arguing with someone at the entrance, and suddenly, a woman barged into the living room.
Anna.
It was my mom, the very woman who had abandoned me to get married.
Don't just barge in here.
Kyle grabbed Mom's shoulder and yelled, but she brushed his hand off. Then she walked up to me, crouched down, and held my hands tightly.
I've missed you, Anna. Let's live together again.
The way she acted was so different from before that I felt nothing but disgust. I could feel goosebumps all over my body. I didn't want to talk to this woman anymore. Looking down at Mom, who was smiling like nothing had happened, I spoke clearly. I don't have a mom. My name is Anna Evans, and I'm a first grader. In September, I started going to the elementary school near my home, and now I walk there every day with my backpack. At first, I was a little nervous about school, but now I've gotten used to it and made lots of friends. Everyone says being at home is more fun than school, but I actually like playing with my friends at school better. Because when I go home, no one is there. Dad comes home after work, but Mom is usually not around, even at night. So, I was always alone until Dad came home. When I was little, I thought Mom was working too, but lately, I realized she wasn't working. She was just out having fun.
I'm home, Anna. Sorry I'm late.
Daddy. As usual, Mom wasn't home that day either, and I had been waiting for Dad while drawing by myself. He must have rushed home because he was sweating all over.
You must be hungry. I'll make dinner right away.
I'll help.
Oh, really? Thanks, that would be a big help.
At my friends' houses, it's usually their moms who cook. But in my house, Dad is always the one who makes dinner. Sometimes Mom prepares food, but all she does is put out store-bought meals, so I've never had her homemade cooking. But Dad's cooking is delicious, so I don't really mind. Besides, I enjoy making dinner with Dad. That night, as usual, Dad and I cooked together, chatted a lot, and had fun eating dinner. Afterward, he gave me a bath and stayed with me until I fell asleep. But Mom didn't come home before I went to bed. Even after that, Mom hardly ever came home, and when she did, she just slept and never talked to me. A while ago, I used to miss her so much that I cried and begged, "Come home early." But every time, she just looked annoyed and said, "You're so noisy." So, I stopped liking Mom. As long as I had kind Dad with me, that was enough. But then, I couldn't even stay with a dad I loved so much. Dad got seriously sick and had to be hospitalized.
Anna, I'm sorry. I got sick.
Lying in his hospital bed, Dad squeezed my hands tightly. I wanted to tell him, it's okay, but if I tried to speak, I knew I'd start crying, so I couldn't say anything. He gently stroked my head. The doctors told me his illness was called terminal cancer. I didn't understand what that meant, but they said it was really hard to cure. I prayed to God, hoping Dad would get better soon. While I was praying, Mom, who had been talking to the doctors, suddenly came back.
Terminal cancer. What a hassle.
She said, looking extremely annoyed. Even though we hadn't seen each other in so long, she wouldn't even look at me. And even though Dad was sick, she didn't seem worried at all. When I pouted, Mom glared at me with a sharp look.
What?
Nothing.
Don't lie to me. You've got that complaining face. You're just as unlikable as ever.
Hearing her insult me, I bit my lip tightly. If I didn't, I felt like I would start crying any second. Dad looked at me with a worried look and begged my mom on the bed.
Amelia, forget about me. Just make sure you take care of Anna. Please.
Mom's face twisted in irritation.
Are you saying I'm not even capable of taking care of my child? Don't be ridiculous.
She then grabbed my hand and yanked me forward. Ouch! I cried out, but she didn't loosen her grip.
Come on, we're going.
Okay. I glanced at Dad, and he gave me a small nod. He was probably telling me to listen to Mom. Even though I didn't want to, I nodded back at Dad and quietly left the hospital with Mom. For the next few days, Mom actually took care of me. She still only bought meals instead of cooking, and she wasn't as good at keeping things tidy as Dad, but it was the first time she had stayed home this much. At first, I felt uneasy about living alone with Mom, but little by little, I got used to it. Maybe I could manage like this until Dad got better. Just when I had started thinking that, I realized that Mom hadn't changed at all. I figured it out about a week after Dad was hospitalized.
Mom hasn't come home.
Dad's eyes widened in shock when he heard me say that. At first, after Dad was hospitalized, Mom stayed home for a few days. But then, she started disappearing again. She had left before, but this was the first time she had been gone for so many days in a row.
So you've been home all alone this whole time?
When I nodded, Dad's face darkened like I had never seen before. That woman, he muttered angrily.
Anna, I'm so sorry you had to go through that. I need to figure something out. For now, could you take this and buy yourself some food?
Saying that, he handed me some money. Of course, I could go shopping by myself, but what I really wanted was to stay here. I didn't want to leave Dad. But I knew if I said that, it would only trouble him, so I took the money and nodded again. Dad must have realized I was forcing myself because he gave me a small, sad smile. The next day, when I went to the hospital, there was a woman standing beside Dad's bed whom I didn't recognize. When she saw me, she smiled warmly.
Hello, Anna.
Hello. I greeted her back but tilted my head, wondering who she was. Then Dad introduced her.
Anna, this is the director of a foster home. She's here to take you in.
A foster home?
A foster home is a place where kids who don't have parents live together. You'll be staying there with other children from now on.
Hearing that, my heart started pounding. I panicked and clung tightly to Dad's arm, desperately trying to show him that I didn't want to go. Would I have you, Dad? Why do I have to go there? Mom's not here right now, but she'll come home someday.
She's not coming back.
His voice was a little firmer than usual, and I flinched. Then, he pulled me into a tight hug and spoke in a voice that sounded like he was about to cry.
I'm really sorry, Anna. I'm sick, so I can't take care of you. I can't rely on my parents, and my brother is overseas. There's no one else who can take care of you.
Dad's parents had already passed away before I was born. Mom's parents were still alive, but she wasn't on good terms with them, so I had never met them. Dad's younger brother was just as kind as him, but he lived overseas for work. So, just like Dad said, there was no other choice but for me to go to a foster home. I cried into Dad's chest for a long time, but eventually, I forced myself to stop and looked up. He gazed at me with a worried expression. Okay, I'll go to the foster home.
Thank you, Anna.
Dad hugged me tightly again, whispering, "I'm sorry," over and over. Then, he turned to the woman behind me and said, "Please take care of her." After that, I packed my things with the help of the people from the foster home and left the house I had lived in all my life. I thought I would be able to go home as soon as Dad got out of the hospital, but that wish never came true. Dad never left the hospital and became a star in the sky.
Well, I'm leaving now, so you better get back to the foster home.
After Dad's funeral, Mom coldly said those words and turned her back on me. Apparently, The hospital had contacted her, and she only came back because she had no choice but to handle his funeral. I kept crying when I saw Dad, who was only a bone, but Mom didn't seem to care at all. Losing Dad was heartbreaking, but the way Mom acted made it hurt even more. After the funeral, Mom left again, and I returned to the foster home. At first, I hated this new life and cried all the time, but the people there were kind, and I became close with the other kids. It felt like maybe I could manage, even without Mom. When I was thinking like that, Mom, who had never cared about me before, suddenly came to visit.
It's been a while, Anna.
She smiled as she spoke, standing next to a man I had never seen before. The man had a grumpy expression, which immediately made me feel uneasy. But Mom seemed to be in a great mood. She smiled and folded her arms with the man and said to me,
I'm getting married to him. So, I'm cutting ties with you.
Hearing that out of nowhere, I was too shocked to say anything. Mom didn't care, and just kept talking happily. Apparently, the man was the son of a CEO of a major company and would be taking over as CEO soon. They wanted to get married, but his parents wouldn't approve if she had a child. I didn't understand why having a child would make them mad, but Mom said it clearly, "You're in the way."
Anyway, so don't think of me as your mother anymore.
After saying that, Mom left with the man. I stood there in a daze for a while, trying to process what had just happened. She abandoned me. I never really liked Mom, but deep down, I had still hoped that someday she would come back for me.
Anna, what's wrong?
Alice, the director, came running toward me, looking worried. I realized that I was crying. As she held me tightly, I cried uncontrollably until I couldn't make a sound anymore.
Anna, you have a visitor.
Sometime after Mom abandoned me, someone else came to see me. I still couldn't forget what happened last time, so just hearing the word visitor made me feel uneasy, but I couldn't just refuse to see them. Reluctantly, I followed Alice to the reception room.
Anna.
The person inside immediately stood up, looking overjoyed. I knew that face very well. Uncle.
I'm so sorry I couldn't be there for you during such a hard time.
My Uncle Kyle, who looked just like Dad, spoke softly as he wrapped me in a gentle hug. It felt like being held by Dad, and my heart warmed up.
You remember? This is my wife, your Aunt Sophia.
Anna, it's been a long time. I only met you when you were little, so I wouldn't be surprised if you don't remember me.
I did vaguely remember her. Being called Aunt out of the blue felt a little strange, but her kind and cheerful smile made me feel at ease.
We finally moved back to the US and we want to become your parents and live together. What do you think?
I was surprised and asked, like, adoption?
That's right. You know about that.
I didn't fully understand. but I had heard the word adoption often here. I knew that when someone was adopted, they got new parents. Uncle and Aunt Sophia wanted to adopt me and become my new family. I hesitated for a moment. But I liked Uncle, and Aunt seemed like a really nice person. So, I made my decision and nodded firmly. Both Uncle and Aunt looked relieved and smiled. That same day, they took me home with them. Life with them was even more peaceful and fun than I had imagined. They were so kind and affectionate toward me. At first, I was a bit shy, but before long, I started calling them Kyle and Sophia. Since Sophia didn't work, she was always there to greet me with a smile when I came home from school. The first time she said, "Welcome home," I was so happy that I almost cried. Sophia would spend time with me every day, making cakes and playing in the park, doing all the things Mom hadn't done before. This is what a real mother is like. With that thought, I started living my days happily. 2 years passed since I moved in with them, and I was now in 3rd grade. That Sunday, we were sitting together as a family, enjoying our afternoon snack. As we laughed and chatted together, the doorbell rang. Sophia stood up murmuring, "Who could that be?" But the doorbell kept ringing persistently. The moment she looked at the monitor, her face twisted in displeasure, and she called Kyle.
Honey, come here for a second.
Kyle glanced at the monitor, and his smile instantly disappeared. He hurried toward the front door. Sophia tried to reassure me, saying, "It's okay," but I couldn't shake off the unease. Then, from the entrance, I heard Kyle arguing with someone. Suddenly, a woman burst into the living room.
Anna.
It was Mom, the woman who had abandoned me to get married. I had almost forgotten about her, and the shock nearly made me choke on my snack.
Don't just barge in here.
Kyle grabbed Mom's shoulder and shouted, but she ignored him and shook his hand off. Then she came toward me, knelt down, and wrapped my hands tightly in hers.
I've missed you, Anna. Let's live together again.
The way she was acting was completely different from before, and it made me feel sick. I could feel goosebumps all over my body. I didn't want to talk to this woman anymore. Looking down at Mom, who was smiling like nothing had happened, I spoke clearly. "I don't have a mom." Mom's smile instantly vanished. Kyle stepped between us and pulled me away from her.
You suddenly show up, and now you say this. What are you even talking about?
That's right. Anna is our daughter now.
When Kyle and Sophia raised their voices in anger, Mom stood up and glared at them.
Anna is my girl. You had no right to take her from the foster home. Don't act so high and mighty.
You abandoned her, and now you act like a mother?
Mom suddenly looked sad and teary-eyed. She wiped away a tear and started talking about herself.
I wasn't thinking straight back then. After my boyfriend dumped me, I ended up broke, and that's when I finally realized that I have no one but Anna.
I had assumed Mom married that man after abandoning me, but apparently, they broke up quickly. His parents had investigated Mom and found out that she had left me in a foster home and never did any housework. Kyle let out a sigh and said in a disbelieving tone,
So basically, his parents found out about your terrible behavior, refused to approve the marriage, and you got dumped. That's entirely your fault.
It's his parents who are crazy. Just because I put my child in a foster home, they got mad. Because of that, he lost his place as heir. And then he blamed me and broke up with me. What did I do wrong?
I didn't want to hear her yelling anymore, so I covered my ears. Noticing this, Sophia pulled me into her arms, holding my head against her chest. Even so, I could still hear Mom's voice.
I lost him. I lost my money, and now my debt is piling up. I have no choice but to live with Anna.
She said she wanted to live with me, but she didn't look happy about it at all. In fact, she looked even angrier than usual. Did she really want to live with me? As I thought about that, Kyle muttered in a low voice.
Could it be? You're after money.
What are you talking about?
Don't play dumb. You want to take Anna back so you can get survivor's benefits and child support payments, don't you?
Mom crossed her arms and scoffed.
So what if I do? Just give me Anna, and everything will be fine.
Like hell we will.
Kyle's furious voice startled me so much that I jumped. Sophia gently rubbed my back to calm me down.
What do you even see Anna as?
Shut up. She's my child. I can do whatever I want with her.
Oh, really? And yet you were the one who abandoned her in a foster home. And we'll never forgive you for not letting us know about my brother's funeral.
Hearing that, I suddenly realized why Kyle and Sophia weren't there. Back then, I was too heartbroken to think about it, but now it made sense. They came back to see Dad, but before they did, Mom had the funeral.
Not to mention, you cut all ties with Anna and left her at the foster home. That's not something a real parent would do.
We heard about what happened and decided to legally adopt Anna. It took us a little time to move back here, but now she's our daughter. Stay out of her life.
Anna is my daughter. Just hand her over now.
Kyle was about to yell something back, but he stopped when he saw me step forward toward Mom. He looked at me with worry, unsure of what I was going to do. Mom, on the other hand, spread her arms wide with a triumphant smile.
See? You still want your real mom, don't you? Come on, Anna. Let's go home together.
Where? My home is here.
What did you say?
Mom glared at me with her usual irritated expression, but I wasn't scared anymore. Because I had Kyle and Sophia, who truly cared about me. I didn't want Kyle and Sophia to be hurt any more than they already had been, so I decided to tell Mom clearly. My parents are these two right here. You gave birth to me, but I don't see you as my mom anymore.
You, how dare you say that to your own mother?
You were the one who told me not to think of you as my mom first.
That was.
For a moment, I thought maybe she had forgotten what she said to me, but it seemed like she actually remembered. She remembered, but was now trying to pretend it never happened. That made me hate her even more than before. No matter how kind Kyle and Sophia had been, the memory of that day still hurt. And yet, Mom never even apologized. There was no way I would ever want to live with someone like that. And I don't want to live with you. So don't ever come back here again.
You little.
Mom's face turned red, and she opened her mouth to yell, but Kyle stepped in front of me protectively.
That's the end of it. Please leave.
Don't be ridiculous, you kidnapper. If you don't give Anna back, I'll call the police.
Go ahead. In fact, if you keep causing trouble, I'll be the one calling them first. Are you okay with that?
Mom clenched her teeth in frustration, then spat out, "You'll regret this," before storming off. As soon as she was gone, I let out a deep breath. My heart was pounding like crazy. Kyle and Sophia leaned in, looking worried.
Are you okay? That must have been scary.
I'm sorry for yelling like that.
I quickly shook my head and smiled at them to reassure them. I was surprised, but I'm okay, because you two, who I love, protected me. Hearing that, they looked at each other before hugging me tightly at the same time. I struggled as I started to feel squeezed, and they quickly let go.
Oh, sorry. That was too tight.
I couldn't help it, but you're just too cute.
I noticed that they were crying when I looked up at them after they let go. Why are you crying?
No, I'm not crying.
Sophia quickly wiped her tears and forced a smile. But Kyle was bawling. His face was soaked with tears.
Hey, Kyle, you're making Anna worry.
But she said she loves us. That made me so happy.
I had never seen Kyle cry like this before, and I had no idea what to say. So, I patted Kyle's head like they always do to me. That just made him cry even harder, and now I was the one feeling helpless.
Just let him cry it out. He will stop eventually.
Really? Sophia sighed and chuckled as she watched Kyle sobbing uncontrollably. At first, I had been worried, but seeing Kyle cry like that started to seem funny. Before I knew it, I was laughing along with Sophia. A week had passed since Mom suddenly showed up. Since then, our family had grown even closer, and every day was filled with happiness. School was tough, especially the studying part, but I didn't mind going because I got to play with my friends. That day, after spending the whole day at school, I packed up my things and got ready to head home. I usually walked home with my best friend, but she was absent that day, so I was on my own. As I stepped out of the school gate and onto my usual path, I noticed a car parked a little way ahead. Cars were always parked along the street, so I didn't think much of it and started to walk past it. But a car door suddenly swung open, and two adults stepped out. I stopped in my tracks when I recognized one of them. Mom?
Anna, I came to pick you up. Come on, let's go.
She was smiling, but it was the kind of smile that bullies had when they were about to do something mean. She reached out toward me. I took a step back, fear creeping into my chest. Mom's smile instantly disappeared, and she clicked her tongue in irritation.
You're such a hassle. Just get in the car.
No. I shook my head desperately, trying to back away. Then Mom's eyes went cold. She turned to the man beside her, the one who had also stepped out of the car.
Enough of this. Put her in the car.
I tried to run, but I was too slow. The man grabbed me easily and started dragging me toward the car. Stop! Let me go, help!
Shut up. Stay quiet.
I screamed as loud as I could while struggling, and Mom, looking flustered, quickly covered my mouth. It was hard to breathe, and I thrashed even harder. But no matter how much I resisted, I couldn't break free, and Mom dragged me into the car, keeping her hand tightly over my mouth. Just as the man outside was about to shut the car door, a loud voice rang out.
What the hell are you doing?
Whoa.
There was the sound of a struggle, followed by a commotion outside. Then, suddenly, a familiar face peeked into the car.
Anna, are you okay?
Mr. Davis. It was my teacher. He wasn't my homeroom teacher, but he always talked to students from different classes, and often played with us during recess. The moment I saw his face, tears poured down my cheeks. I shoved a stunned Mom aside and bolted out of the car, crying. Mr. Davis, help me.
It's okay now. You're safe.
He hugged me and gently patted my head. Once I calmed down a little and stepped back, I saw another teacher pinning the man down.
We got a call from a neighbor about a suspicious car parking around, so we were patrolling near the school. Thank God we weren't too late.
Hearing his words, I started to think that maybe Mom had been targeting me all along. She had been lurking around the school, waiting for the moment I was alone.
We just called the police, so stay put until they arrive.
Mr. Davis turned to Mom, who was still sitting in the car. Her face had gone pale, but she glared at him with defiance. A few minutes later, the police car arrived, and several officers stepped out.
Are you the one who called this in?
Yes, I'm a teacher at this elementary school. I saw one of my students being forced into a car, so I called the police.
The officer nodded and then turned to Mom. Please step out of the vehicle. The man had already been handed over to the other officers and was now sitting in the patrol car. It looked like they were questioning him there. Mom hesitated but eventually got out, pursing her lips in frustration. Then, with her hands on her hips, she spoke confidently.
I'm her mother. I was just taking her shopping after school. What's so wrong about a mother putting her daughter in her own car?
And who is that man?
My friend. He was just going to come with us on our little outing.
One of the officers then crouched down in front of me.
Is what she's saying true?
I peeked out from behind Mr. Davis and glanced at Mom. She was glaring at me with a look so sharp it could pierce through me. She didn't say anything, but I knew exactly what she wanted. Go along with my story. But I didn't care anymore. Whether she got arrested or not, it wasn't my problem. If I were being honest, I wish she would just disappear from my life forever. So I spoke clearly, without hesitation. She's just the woman who gave birth to me. She's not my mother, and I don't know that man at all. My uncle and aunt took me in, and they are my parents now.
You little. What are you saying?
So you're saying she was lying about taking you shopping?
The officer ignored Mom's outburst and asked me again. I nodded without hesitation. Yes, it was a lie. They suddenly forced me into the car. I was really scared.
Got it. Thank you.
The officer stood up and walked toward Mom. Then, he reached out his hand toward her.
There's a discrepancy in your statements. We'll need you to come with us to the station for further questioning.
Then, Mom slapped the officer's hand away and suddenly lunged at me. Her eyes burned with rage as she grabbed at me.
You ungrateful brat. Do you know who raised you?
But it was Dad who brought me up. I wanted to say it, but fear froze my voice. Stop it! Mr. Davis shielded me with his body, trying to hold her back. But Mom's rage only grew.
Everyone just keeps treating me like garbage. Kids should just shut up and do whatever their parents say. A parent has the right to do whatever they want with their child.
Children aren't property. Just because you're a parent doesn't mean you can do whatever you want.
What did you just say?
Mom was shaking with fury. She raised her hand, ready to hit Mr. Davis. I squeezed my eyes shut, but before she could strike, an officer grabbed her arm.
Calm down. Violence is not acceptable.
When I opened my eyes, I saw Mom's hand firmly held by the officer. Instead of calming down, though, she turned her rage on him.
Let go of me. I told you I'm her mother. Get your hands off me.
That's something we need to discuss at the station.
There's nothing to talk about.
Then, she yanked her arm free, and without warning, punched the officer. I gasped in shock, and even the teachers looked stunned. The officer she hit didn't even flinch. Instead, he calmly glanced at his watch.
3:58 p.m. You are under arrest for assaulting an officer.
What are you talking about? Let go of me.
3 officers immediately restrained her and dragged her toward the patrol car. Even as they forced her inside, she kept struggling and yelling, but there was no way she could escape from multiple officers. Eventually, she and the man were taken away to the police station. After receiving a call from the school, Sophia rushed over in a panic and took me home. When Kyle heard what had happened, he was furious and went straight to the police station, but they wouldn't let him see Mom since the officers were still questioning her. Kyle stayed angry for a while, but when I said, "It's okay now," he finally calmed down and returned to his usual gentle self. I liked Kyle better when he was smiling instead of angry, so I was really glad he went back to normal. About a month later, when I had almost forgotten about the whole incident, Kyle suddenly approached me with a serious expression.
Anna, I need to talk to you about your biological mother. She was sentenced to prison.
Sentenced? I tilted my head in confusion at the unfamiliar word, so Kyle explained it in simpler terms. It meant that when someone does something bad, they receive punishment right away. Mom had been found guilty of trying to abduct me and assaulting a police officer, so she was going to jail. So, does that mean she will never get out?
No, she will eventually. But apparently, she also borrowed money from loan sharks, so life after prison might be even worse for her.
I heard another unfamiliar word, loan sharks, but Kyle didn't explain it in detail. All I understood was that Mom had borrowed money from someone. And unless she paid it back, she would always be chased by dangerous people.
That's why, to make sure she never tries to come back for you, we're thinking of moving somewhere she can't find us.
We're moving.
Yeah, but only if you're okay with it.
Kyle and Sophia both looked at me with worried expressions. They were probably afraid that I wouldn't want to move. I felt sad about leaving my school friends behind. But the thought of Mom showing up again and trying to take me away was much scarier. I understand. Let's move.
Wait, you're really okay with it?
Kyle seemed a little surprised that I agreed so easily. He blinked a few times and asked again. Yeah, I can make new friends. And besides, as long as I'm with you and Sophia, anywhere will be fun.
Anna.
Kyle's eyes welled up with tears as he looked at me. Before living with him, I never knew he was such a crybaby. Oh geez, Kyle, you cry way too easily.
I can't help it.
Sniffling loudly, Kyle blew his nose into a tissue, still struggling to stop his tears. Watching him, Sophia and I couldn't help but burst into laughter. I prayed to God in my heart that this happiness would continue no matter where I moved. After that, we moved to a peaceful countryside town, and I started attending a new school. Unlike my old school, there was only one class per grade, but everyone quickly became my friend. They even taught me all kinds of fun games that I could never have played in the city. I loved my new life in the countryside, spending my days feeling free and happy. Kyle and Sophia were just as kind as ever. And even though we had moved, the three of us continued living happily as a family. I had no idea what happened to Mom after that, but she never came looking for us. I was sure I would never see her again. From now on, I would cherish the memories of Dad while creating many new ones with Kyle and Sophia.